Good morning, everyone. This is Paula Harris, and I have Dr. Kelli Fischer with me this morning from Hendersonville, Tennessee. Dr. Fischer, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you this morning?
I am doing well, and I'm so excited you're on the call with me today. Dr. Fischer and I have been acquainted for a few years now. She's got a wonderful practice with her husband. And tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into dentistry, Dr. Fischer.
Well, I grew up in a small town in eastern Kentucky, and dentistry really wasn't readily available there when I was young. So my parents drove me about 3 hours to Lexington, Kentucky to see a pediatric dentist, and then as I got older to see an orthodontist there as well. And I really think the orthodontist made such a favorable impression on me that that's the reason I decided to consider becoming a dentist. And then as the years passed, I began shadowing a local dentist and really never wanted to do anything else. But then when I started college, I got a little intimidated by the difficulty of all the classes and really felt as though I wasn't prepared for those science classes and had to play a little catch up. I actually even changed my major to elementary education, just thinking there's no way I was going to be able to make it through. but I found out quickly that was not for me. I changed it.
I'm glad you did. I think you were right about that decision, going back to dentistry.
Yeah, I don't think the little kids were for me. But so I actually ended up gaining early acceptance to the University of Kentucky after about 3 years, and I guess the rest is history.
Wow, that's great. You know, I've heard that about orthodontists so many times when I talk to dentists who are in school or recent grads or even been out for a long time, and I'll say, what caused you to get into dentistry? And a lot of them have been through ortho, and they said, that orthodontist really had an impression on me. So any orthodontists out there listening, you really have an impact on
They do.
That's good. So then you met your husband in dental school?
We did. We met, we were in the same class, so we met at orientation our freshman year, and when classes got started, we were often seated in alphabetical order, and our last names were next to each other, so we kind of had no option but to become good friends. And we didn't actually date until our third year, but now married 28 years, I guess the rest is history.
That's right. That's amazing, to have a husband and wife practice. What a wonderful thing. And you're the same age, and to be in it that long together. Some people might say I would have killed him by then, but
that people ask me a lot how we've done it this many years, and my joke I come back with is, as long as I get my way, everything's good.
No, that's a good point right there. That's very good.
Yeah.
So I guess, how long have you been in practice? You mentioned 28 years, right?
We've been in practice 28 years. We actually bought an existing practice that was only about 8 years old at the time, so that's kind of a rare find, I think, out there. The dentist was returning to school to do specialty training, so it was a practice that was basically busy enough for one of us at that time, so we had to go through some growing pains, but we made it.
That's great. And then how did you decide what roles you were going to take in running the business?
I think we just kind of naturally fell into those roles because I tend to be a little more outspoken and he's much more laid back. And with all the employees being female, that also played a role. I think they find it easier to come to me than to him. So that just kind of transformed itself into the management kind of things for me. And Scott's much more scientific minded, and he tends to do more research and reading and staying up to date on all the dental stuff.
Yeah, that's good. And that is true. As I've gotten to know you, you are definitely, that's the personality profiles, and that's just a natural fit for the both of you. One of the reasons I wanted you to be on the recording was because you are an excellent businesswoman, and I will title this Know Your Business, because a lot of doctors struggle with the clinical side and then the business side. I was talking to a doctor this morning, and he said, one of my friends said, I love dentistry, but I want to get away from my team. So you've done very well in this area, and I really wanted you to share some of the things that you do on the business side. So how did you learn your excellent business skills? Because you really do have excellent business skills.
Well, thank you. I don't know about that, but I grew up in a house where both of my parents worked, and in businesses they either owned themselves or that family members owned. And I really think I was just around it all the time and listening to their conversations. And my grandmother and her family owned a telephone company, and my mother was the bookkeeper there for many years, and I always worked there when I was not in school. And I think I just picked up a lot from that. And then when we started our practice, we hired a local accountant that had been recommended, and he taught me so much. I just can't even tell you. And we still have him today, and you know, he teaches me some of the things I need to be watching from a monetary standpoint, I guess, more than anything.
That's awesome. You know, you really need a good accountant, a good attorney, people like that support team who can know your business as well and give you good advice. Some of them, unfortunately, are not like that. They don't really know anything about dentistry. They just know how to file your taxes. And we need more than that these days, especially. Yeah. So, you know, how did you learn about dental insurance? Because I'll give you an example. I had a dentist the other day, and he said, they didn't teach me anything about dental insurance in school. And so I think most doctors come out of school with no knowledge or limited knowledge of how dental insurance works. And some of them never learn it, but you kind of took it on. So how did you learn?
Well, he's exactly right. They don't teach us anything. And I had the advantage, I guess, of when we bought this practice, I worked with the owner for about 6 months before we completely took it over. So spending that time with he and his office manager at that time, they taught me the basics, I guess.
Oh, okay.
And then, you know, as the years went on, everything has changed drastically in 28 years.
Oh,
so
yes.
Now I really rely more on my admin staff to do it. I have one lady that's been with us for, I think, 10 years now, and that is her primary role. And she teaches me every day something new that's going on. So I've had to kind of turn it over more as the practice has grown and grown. So I feel like I don't know as much as I probably should because I do depend so much on others.
But I think you know more than most, and some practices choose to not have any contracts, and then most practices do have some contracts. You have a couple, but it is changing daily, and you know, some patients will be asking about things in the treatment room, and it can be a barrier sometimes for them closing the case or moving forward with treatment when, you know, those insurance questions are all saved for the front. So I think you do a great job with that, just from what I know. So yeah, something else you want to share about that?
Well, we tried to put it back to the front office as much as we can. I think the general public is so aware right now of how insurance is such a negative thing right now in their mind. So it actually helps us, I think, in those conversations, just saying, you know, we'll do our best for you, but we can't always be successful in getting reimbursement, and trying to explain to them as well why we don't take a lot of those plans. And so I think in today's environment, it's actually becoming easier to have those conversations.
You are so right about that, and I think we need to ride that wave because it is very challenging. So what are the tools, systems, guidelines you use to monitor the health of your practice when you're looking at the business side?
Well, we use Dentrix for our software, so I rely primarily on those reports to track our production, collections, adjustments, and new patients. And then, of course, we use your tracker as well to kind of break those numbers out even more. And I just watch for changes from month to month and year to date. And my big thing is to not panic at the first signs of fluctuation, but just kind of take it as a signal to be aware of what's happening and just sort of watch for any negative trends. I really think one of the worst things you can do is to panic and start changing systems or staff too quickly.
Oh, yes, I know. I am so proud of you for that, because that's one of the main things I wanted you to share too, is that you keep your calm and you don't change too quickly. And like you said, you give things a little time, right?
Right. You have to find out what normal is. You cannot panic at a down month. You just got to ride the wave sometimes.
Good advice. And so you have a recent example of this that I really wanted you to share about hygiene.
I do. We were able to add another hygienist for 2 days. It's probably been about 1.5 years, 2 years ago now. And I evaluated the patient numbers and knew we had the numbers to support this addition. But I also know it takes a lot of time to go through the patients. I feel like it takes a full year to get through the whole cycle of recare and get everybody's schedule back up to par. But unfortunately, at the same time, we had admin turnover, and the recare coordinator position was turned over, so that slowed us down a little bit too. And that all created a tremendous amount of stress among the hygienists, because they felt like their production was really suffering because I added those days. It was real difficult to stand my ground, but I knew from my numbers that we had the people. We just had to work our systems to make sure that the schedules were filled and even alter systems some. But it could be done, but you just had to sit there and wait it out. And I would every month look at the numbers and see hers, gradually increasing. But her numbers were paying her salary, and that was my thing. If I know that she's paying her own salary, then we can stick this out and keep growing with it.
That's right.
But literally one day in a staff meeting, I had just about enough of all the complaining, and I said, this new hygienist, she's here to stay. You can either work to get your production up, or you can sit back and complain, but we're not changing anything. So, that wasn't probably the day I won any popularity contests in the office, but I guess the bottom line is watch your numbers. They don't lie.
Yeah.
And stick with what you have to do to grow your patient base. Don't be bullied by those around you. You stick to your guns.
That is absolutely so. And I was just so proud of the way you handled that. And now we're on the back side of it, and it has worked. And it does. A lot of teams complain because they don't want to spend the extra effort to fill the schedule. They love to say, I don't have time. And then I know we're not going to get into this, but your hygienists are on commission as well. Yes. So that even made it more stressful for them. And they have proven themselves well. And I've seen your numbers, and it's doing very well. So I just am proud of you for sticking to your guns on that.
It was tough, but we did it. And, in hindsight, very glad.
Yes. And
it has worked, and all of their production so far this year is up tremendously. So I think they would tell you at this point it worked as well.
Yeah, right. I see a lot of doctors trim their hygiene department because of all the open time. And what they're really doing, when we look at their trackers, they're seeing less patients. They end up seeing less patients.
You have to have the time slots available.
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay, so another thing you do is you watch your expenses pretty closely. Is that right?
I do. I've always kind of used the industry standards for overhead categories, and purchases are something I watch pretty closely. I don't just give my staff a credit card and let them have anything they want. I've watched especially big purchases like equipment and what will my return on investment be, whether it be monetary or time saving or even staff savings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, you just kind of ask yourself, is this something I want or is this something that I really need? And base it on that and the return on investment. And then probably the biggest challenge I have from an expense standpoint is my staff, because I have a lot of long-term staff members. So staying in that payroll overhead percentage can be somewhat of a challenge at times. And this is where I've always tried to pay them a fair salary, but at the same time we rely on a bonus system to make up those deficiencies. And I'm very open with the numbers with all the employees, and they know if the practice does well, then they will do well.
Mm. That's perfect. I know the doctor I worked for, he made it very clear there won't be any raises. Your bonus is your raise. And, we appreciated that, and we worked harder for it. Mm-hmm. And I do like the fact that you share the numbers with your team. Some doctors don't, and that's their preference. But when we talk about ownership with the team, one of the things that builds ownership is if they know what's going on. I mean, it's like in my, I'll tell one on myself. In my marriage, when I was very, very young, my husband at the time did not let me have the checkbook. So, of course, I'm going to ask for things because I never knew what the balance was in there.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
So, I mean, you can't blame them for asking when they don't know where things stand. So, I think that's important, and I love that you do that.
I think you have to share with them as well expenses. That's like this year we're having a fantastic year, but you have to bring it back down and say, okay, you got to remember, yes, we're up in production, but we're also up in expenses. So you've got to make them understand that.
That's exactly right. It doesn't all go home with you.
Right.
Like they think it does.
I wish it did.
Exactly. So tell us about your team. You mentioned a minute ago some of the team members, how many you have, how long they've been with you.
We have 12 team members right now. We have 4 admin, 3 assistants, and 5 hygienists. Mm-hmm. My assistant is the longest. She's been there for 25 years. We have several that have been there 15, 10 years. We have a 20-year, and then we have some newer at the youngest, I guess, is 2 years in the practice. Mm-hmm. But it's always a challenge, I think, with every office.
Yes.
Keeping a good staff and finding a good staff. Finding additional team members is probably one of the hardest things, I think. Somebody once told me that you shouldn't hire someone that you wouldn't go out to dinner with, and I know that sounds pretty trivial, but it's something that I've stuck with all these years. I want good people.
That's good.
And I feel like if I can get good people, they can be trained to do the job, and you can trust them to do the job that they're supposed to do.
That is a very good philosophy. I'll tell you, I'm really excited about what you've done with your team and how you continue to maintain that, because since we've been working together, you've had a couple of new people, but you really do hire well. And that is something a lot of practices struggle with. And with the younger generation, they move a lot. They don't stay at one place a long time. And so hiring has become a big challenge for a lot of people. So
it is a challenge. And I think one of the biggest challenges I have is you want that position filled quickly. Mm-hmm. But if you just are trying to put a body there, you're going to create more trouble for yourself, and you've got to let that person go when they don't work out, and you got to go through the whole process again. So sometimes I think it's better just to slow down and find that right person, and then that makes your life a little easier in the long run.
That is so true. The scarcity thinking really creates more trouble about just hiring someone right off the bat, and I've seen people do that. They just hire the same day they interview somebody, and that's really not a wise thing to do anymore, especially with the background checks you need to be doing and references and things like that. So talking about team, how would you describe your team leadership style?
Probably very hands-off.
Mm.
I'm not a micromanager. I'm not in their face all the time making sure they're doing. I trust them. I feel like I hired someone good for the job. I feel like we trained them well for the job, so I expect them to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
And then by keeping track of all of our numbers and everything, you can tell when there's someone that's slacking. And
Yes.
although I don't like confrontation, unfortunately, you have to do that sometimes, and to get to the bottom of where the issue lies.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten more and more difficult for me as the years have gone on to be both the manager and the dentist, but I like it that way. I don't feel like anyone else has as much interest in it or cares as much as I do, but I spend so much time chairside now that it has become quite difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You helped us a lot in the last couple of years to create a system of team leaders,
Mm-hmm.
where we have a representative from each department be the leader, and they hold individual department meetings and discuss any minor issues they're having, problems, systems, and they try to come up with a solution for those, and then they bring it to me to okay the solution or help find a solution, and that works pretty well most of the time.
Yeah.
My office staff is a lot like me as well. They don't like confrontation either, so throwing some of them into that leadership position has been a bit of a challenge. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that does help break things down, kind of a chain of command when you have a larger team. That team leadership style doesn't work for everyone or doesn't work for every practice, but when you do get a larger group of people having fewer to listen to all of the things that are going on, fewer people in a smaller group, sometimes you can get more done.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So tell us about your meetings.
Well, we have and have always had a monthly staff meeting where all the
Mm-hmm.
employees are required to be there. And this meeting is primarily for reviewing progress toward our goals. We discuss our production,
Mm-hmm.
collection, new
Mm-hmm.
patient numbers. We compare those to the prior year and to our goals for the current year. And again, kind of looking for trends, either negative or positive, and then trying to figure out why it's happening. Why is something going good? Why is something going bad? And then make any adjustments that we need to at that time.
Mm-hmm.
We use that meeting to have probably more lately than before for training on if we need a system that needs to be worked on a little bit, or computer updates are always changing. If we need to go over some things with Dentrix, we do that during that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our the team leaders have a meeting the week prior to the full staff meeting to go over what they brought out of their department meetings and talk to one another and see what needs to be addressed with the full staff. And during that meeting, I'll go to each team leader individually and ask them to present their part of the meeting.
Yes, that's great. So it's not like you just have one meeting a month. They're having their other meetings, department meetings, and then you have your huddles and things like that. So
right.
That really does help, like I said, with larger teams as well. And so the last question I have for you is another one of those big topics that a lot of doctors struggle with, and that's performance reviews. So you are very faithful with these. So tell me, what is your system? Share with us about that.
Well, I'm going to say it's one of my least desirable things to do, but but I know it has to be done. So, I do it, but I don't love doing it. And I'm sure no one out there loves doing it.
No one does.
I try to be very positive with their reviews. I don't think anyone wants to go into a meeting and just be beat down, but you have to address any
Sure.
problems.
Mm-hmm.
We use that time to make any salary adjustments, but I've always been very clear with my staff that just because you've been there an extra year doesn't mean you are going to get a raise.
That's right.
It is tied to their length of employment, but the overall status of the practice is what eventually determines whether or not they get that raise. I've always done ours at the beginning of a new year and kind of use it to recap, their salary, what they actually made for the year, and how the practice did. But with 12 staff members, that takes a lot of time. So this year, we've kind of started changing the system. We're almost I guess we are halfway through the year now. And I've done their reviews on their anniversary date this time. And I think I like that better. And it spreads it out, number one, for me, but I think it also helps celebrate a little bit that anniversary, and that they have stuck with us, and it's one more positive in the performance review.
That's a great way to do it. And some of the larger teams I have do it on the anniversary date, and I know your Facebook page. You guys do some great things with marketing as well. Maybe I have to have you back on another call and talk about all the marketing that you guys have done, because you've really made some great headways with that in the last few years. But you highlight your team members on the Facebook page and talk about their anniversary date. I've seen several of those posts, and that's just a really nice thing to do to make them feel appreciated.
Yeah, I think you and Shelley have really helped us a lot on the Facebook, and one of the newer hires that I have made actually had a degree in marketing. So not only is she part of the admin staff, she has taken over all of our marketing efforts, and that's been a huge help. And they love doing those videos.
Oh, yeah. They are so good at those. I tell you, they have just been amazing. So what an inspiration for other teams. But, I'll highlight one thing about the reviews that you said, that the raises or salary adjustments are overall status of the practice. That is so important for the team to know. It's not just tied to their length of service there, and that they worked really hard. A lot of people work really hard, and the practice is not doing that well financially. So we can't just keep giving raises, or you get your overhead way out of whack, and that creates job insecurity for team members. I try to tell them that. I said, if the overhead gets so high, that's going to create job insecurity, because somebody's going to have to go because we can't pay.
That's exactly. I always tell mine that it's not that I don't love you, and it's not that I don't appreciate the job that you're doing, but I have a business to run.
Very good.
And we've got to have a healthy business.
That's right. And that's the whole theme of this call, is know your business. And you, as I said, have done a great job with that. So I thank you for sharing your story and your experiences. And you're going to be a big help to a lot of doctors. You may not realize that, but you're going to inspire some, I'm sure, about getting more in touch with their numbers and having some more information, sharing that with their team, growing their hygiene department, even some marketing things, doing those performance reviews. Please do those reviews out there. So thank you, Dr. Kelli. You have an amazing practice, and you have an awesome reputation in your area as well. You said you were just in a magazine, the Nashville magazine. Do you want to tell us about that? Or
it's the Nashville Lifestyles. They do a top doctor section, and then another month they do a top dentist. And I think this is the third year I've been in that for the top dentist in our area. And it's quite an honor and a privilege. And
that's great.
Just another one of those things showing the growth in our community and in our practice.
That's right. Well, you're a great example, and I admire you for reaching out and wanting to help others. So thank you again.
Well, thanks. Thank you. I've enjoyed it.
All right. Me too. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.